Imagine a currency so powerful that it can reshape global politics, weaken nations, strengthen alliances, and influence wars without a single shot being fired. A currency so dominant that entire economies depend on it to buy energy, settle debts, and survive in the world market. This currency is the United States dollar. But the dollar was not born with this power. It earned this power slowly, through war, economic strategy, global trust, and ambitious political moves. Today on Retro Finance Files, we explore the extraordinary story of how the U.S. dollar transformed from a simple national currency into a global financial weapon that shapes international relations and directs the flow of world events. Before we begin, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Retro Finance Files so you never miss the history behind the money that rules our world. Our journey begins in 1944, when World War II was coming to an end. The world was shattered. European cities were destroyed, factories were in ruins, currencies had collapsed, and governments were drowning in debt. Nations needed stability and a new system to rebuild. To fix this, representatives from 44 Allied countries gathered in a small resort town called Bretton Woods in New Hampshire, USA. They created a new global financial order, one that revolved around a single stable currency. That currency was the U.S. dollar. Under the Bretton Woods Agreement, every major currency in the world was tied to the dollar, and the dollar itself was tied to gold and a fixed price of $35 per ounce. This meant that if a country collected U.S. dollars through trade, they could exchange those dollars for real physical gold. This system gave nations confidence. The United States had the largest gold reserves in the world and a booming industrial economy after the war. The world trusted America to anchor global stability. This moment marked the beginning of the dollar's rise to domination. However, maintaining this system required discipline, and by the 1960s, the United States began spending far more money than it had gold to support. The Cold War, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and expanding military commitments all drained U.S. finances. More dollars were being printed and sent overseas, but the gold supply backing those dollars was shrinking. Other countries noticed this imbalance. Some began losing faith in the dollar's gold backing. France, under President Charles de Gaulle, even sent warships to the United States to demand gold in exchange for its dollar reserves. As more nations began converting their dollars into gold, U.S. gold reserves plummeted. This created a global crisis. Something had to change. The breaking point came in 1971. On August 15th, President Richard Nixon made a shocking announcement. He suspended the convertibility of dollars into gold. In other words, foreign nations could no longer trade their dollars for U.S. gold. This event became known as the Nixon Shock, and it officially ended the Bretton Woods system. The dollar was no longer backed by gold. It became a fiat currency valuable, not because of gold, but because the world believed in America's economic strength. Many countries feared this would cause the dollar to collapse as the world's anchor. But instead of losing power, the dollar became even stronger. To understand why, we need to turn to oil. In the 1970s, the United States struck one of the most important deals in financial history with Saudi Arabia, the world's largest exporter of oil. The agreement stated that Saudi Arabia would sell oil exclusively in U.S. dollars. In return, the United States would provide military protection, weapons, and long-term security assistance. Other oil-producing nations in OPEC followed the same model. This created the Petrodollar system, a financial structure where oil, the most essential resource for transportation, industry, and global growth, could only be purchased with U.S. dollars. Suddenly, every nation, no matter its political stance or economic size, needed dollars to buy energy. Demand for the dollar surged across the world. Countries stored dollars as official reserves. Banks needed dollars for settlements. Corporations needed dollars for trade. The dollar became the bloodstream of the global economy. This gave the United States a powerful new advantage: influence over any nation that needed oil, which was effectively the entire planet. This influence soon evolved into a new kind of weapon. The first major demonstration came in 1979 during the Iran hostage crisis. The United States froze billions of dollars in Iranian assets held in American banks. Overnight, Iran lost access to its own money. No military force was used, only financial power. This moment marked the beginning of using the dollar as a strategic tool for political pressure. Over the next decades, the United States discovered that controlling the world's main currency gave it the ability to punish adversaries without war. Sanctions became common. Access to American markets could be granted or taken away. Trade restrictions could be tightened. Investments could be blocked. The battlefield had expanded into the financial world. But the most powerful tool of dollar-based influence arrived with the rise of the global banking network known as SWIFT. SWIFT, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, is the system that banks use to communicate when transferring money internationally. Even though SWIFT is based in Belgium, it is heavily influenced by the Western financial system. And because most global transactions involve dollars, the United States holds significant power over it. Cutting a country off from SWIFT means shutting down its access to global banking. Without SWIFT, a nation cannot easily receive payments, buy goods, or participate in trade. This financial cutoff is like removing oxygen from an economy. It has been used against Iran, North Korea, Syria, and even Russian banks years before the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. In 2022, the use of the dollar as a weapon reached its most dramatic level. After Russia invaded Ukraine, the United States and its European allies launched unprecedented financial actions. They froze more than $300 billion of Russia's foreign reserves held in Western banks. They removed major Russian banks from the SWIFT system. They blocked Russia from accessing dollar-based transactions. These steps shocked the world. Foreign reserves were always believed to be untouchable, even during conflicts. But suddenly, a major nation found its savings locked away. Countries around the world began to question their dependence on the dollar. If it could happen to Russia, could it happen to them too? Many nations started diversifying their reserves, increasing their gold holdings, and exploring alternatives such as the Chinese yuan or digital currencies. The BRICS nations Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa began discussing ways to trade without using the dollar. Although these attempts have not dethroned the dollar, they reveal deep concerns about its weaponization. Still, despite global discomfort, the dollar remains extremely powerful. Several reasons explain why. First, the dollar is still the world's main reserve currency. Central banks across Asia, Europe, Africa, and the Americas depend on dollars to stabilize their economies. Second, most international trade is still conducted in dollars. Whether buying oil, metals, machinery, or food, companies prefer using dollars because it is universal and trusted. Third, U.S. Treasury bonds are considered the safest investment in the world. Countries rely on them to store wealth securely. Fourth, the U.S. economy remains one of the largest and most stable on the planet, continuing to fuel trust in the dollar. These pillars hold the dollar firmly in place, even in a changing world. But every powerful tool has a dark side. Using the dollar as a weapon can weaken global trust over time. Some nations fear becoming vulnerable to sudden sanctions. Others believe the dollar gives the United States too much influence. As a result, the world may slowly move toward a more diversified financial system in the future. However, no alternative currently matches the dollar's global reach, stability, and liquidity. The euro faces internal political challenges. The Chinese yuan is tightly controlled by Beijing. Gold is reliable but not practical for everyday trade. Cryptocurrencies are innovative but too volatile to serve as a national reserve. For now, The dollar stands alone as the world's financial superpower. The story of the dollar is the story of modern global strategy. It is the story of how money became influence, how financial systems became battlegrounds, and how a currency grew into a weapon. From Bretton Woods to the Nixon Shock, from the Petrodollar to SWIFT, the dollar has shaped the world in ways no empire ever could with armies alone. The question now is not whether the dollar is powerful. It clearly is, but whether that power will remain as absolute in the decades to come. If you enjoyed this deep dive into financial history and global economics, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Retro Finance Files. Your support helps us continue bringing you incredible stories about money, power, and the forces shaping our world. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.